The city of São Paulo breathes. It's a living, pulsing entity of concrete and steel, of light and shadow. By day, its arteries are clogged with traffic, its sidewalks a river of millions. But by night, it transforms. The commercial heart of Avenida Paulista slows its rhythm. The towering banks and corporate citadels standing as silent, modern monoliths against the orange haze sky. And in one of those monoliths, the Banco Itaú on Frei Caneca Street, a secret was growing. A secret buried deep beneath the feet of the unsuspecting city. I want you to picture it not as a bank, but as a fortress. A fortress built not in the age of moats and drawbridges, but in the era of digital codes and magnetic locks. Its walls were layered. First, the public facade of polished granite and glass. Then, the first line of defense, a vault door, thick and imposing, a masterpiece of metallurgy. But the true heart of the fortress, the inner sanctum, was something else entirely. The coffre forte, the strong box, a separate freestanding vault within the main vault, a massive cube of reinforced concrete and steel, designed to withstand not just drills and torches, but the very passage of time itself. Inside it, in individual safety deposit boxes, lay the secrets and fortunes of the city's elite. Jewels, documents, stacks of currency, heirlooms of unimaginable value. To breach it was considered impossible. A fantasy, a challenge, and challenges, for the right kind of mind, are like a siren's call. They didn't see themselves as criminals, not in the way you might think. They were architects of the impossible, engineers of chaos. Their blueprint was not for a building but for its deconstruction. The leader, his name is lost to official reports, known only by aliases, was a quiet man, a planner. He didn't carry a gun. He carried schematics. He didn't issue threats. He issued calculations. He had studied this fortress, not from the outside but from within. He knew its rhythms, its routines, the comings and goings of its guards. He knew that the greatest strength of any system is also, inevitably, its greatest weakness. For the Banco Itaú, that strength was its location. It was built into a complex, sharing walls with a cinema, a restaurant. It wasn't a solitary island. It was part of an ecosystem, and that provided a seam, a crack in the armor. The plan was not to knock down the door. It was to go around it, under it, a tunnel. I still wonder sometimes what the first meeting was like. A rented garage, perhaps, in a nondescript neighborhood. The smell of engine oil and concrete dust. A map, hand-drawn, spread across a workbench. Not a map of streets, but of sewers, of foundations, of electrical conduits and water mains. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. They would find a point of entry far from the bank, a hidden place, and they would dig with the precision of surgeons and the patience of archaeologists, navigating a subterranean world no one ever saw, a landscape of dripping pipes and ancient earth, until they reached the one place everyone believed was untouchable. They chose their entry point with cold genius. A house, a small rented two-story house on Alameda dos Jerupes, a quiet street, just over 100 meters from the bank's back wall. 100 meters, it might as well have been a mile. The distance wasn't the obstacle, it was the path. The path was through soil, through rock, through the very foundations of other buildings, beneath the network of urban infrastructure that keeps a city alive. They moved into the house like ghosts. They paid the rent in cash, months in advance. To the neighbors they were quiet, polite, a construction crew maybe, keeping to themselves. They built a fence, high and solid, shielding the property from prying eyes. The perfect disguise is not invisibility, it is mundanity. And then they began. Inside that house, they dismantled the floor. They broke through the concrete foundation and descended into the earth. The tunnel they built was no crude hole. It was a masterpiece of clandestine engineering, shored up with wooden planks, lit by a string of extension lights, equipped with a rudimentary rail system for moving dirt and tools. They used professional jackhammers, drills, shovels. The noise was their constant enemy. They timed their work for the daytime, when the city's own cacophony, the traffic, the construction, the general hum of millions would swallow the sound of their progress. At night they slept, or they planned, their bodies aching, their lungs filled with the damp, thick air of the tunnel. For 2 months they dug. 2 months of back-breaking, terrifying labor. One man at the face of the tunnel, drilling, chipping, scrape. Others behind, moving the debris back in carts, bagging it, disposing of it secretly. A little at a time, the air grew thick, hot, difficult to breathe. The darkness was absolute, broken only by the single bulb on a man's helmet. Every inch forward was a victory. Every sound from above, a car door slamming, a siren in the distance, was a potential disaster. They were moles, burrowing towards an impossible goal, driven by a vision of what lay at the other end. The pressure was immense, a psychological weight bearing down on them as heavily as the physical earth above their heads. Trust was their currency. A single mistake, a moment of carelessness, a loose word in a bar, and it would all be for nothing. Meanwhile, life in São Paulo went on. Oblivious. Shoppers crowded the malls. Moviegoers filed into the cinemas next to the bank. The guards at Banco Itaú made their rounds, checking the locks, the cameras, the impregnable vault door. They had no idea that the real threat wasn't from above, but from below. That while they watched the streets, an attack was being mounted from a direction they had never considered. The diggers, guided by the planner's intricate diagrams, knew exactly where they were going. They weren't digging blind. They were aiming for the very heart, the strong box, the coffre. After weeks of digging horizontally, they began to dig upwards. This was the most delicate part, breaking through the bank's foundation, into the sub-basement, avoiding the sensitive seismic, an acoustic sensor. They used thermal lances now, tools that could cut through reinforced concrete, with a superheated jet of flame, slicing through the floor of the vault room with a terrifying, focused intensity. It was a calculated risk. The heat, the smoke, the potential for triggering alarms. But they had studied the security systems, knew their blind spots, their limitations. They worked with a chilling confidence. And then one night it happened. A final piece of concrete gave way. A man's hand, gloved and grimy, reached up through the hole, into the silent, cool, air-conditioned darkness of the vault room. They had arrived. They emerged from the hole like figures from a nightmare, covered in dirt and sweat, their eyes wide in the dim emergency lighting. They stood inside the fortress. The main vault door, that monumental slab of steel, was behind them, still locked, still secure. It had been rendered utterly irrelevant. They were now standing before the final obstacle, the strong box itself. Another massive door, with a complex dual locking mechanism. This was not a door you could blast open. It required finesse. They went to work, not with dynamite, but with drills and specialized tools, exploiting weaknesses in the lock design they had identified beforehand. It was a slow, painstaking process. Each click of the lock mechanism, a tiny victory in the profound silence. When the door finally swung open, it revealed the prize, row upon row of safety deposit boxes, hundreds of them, each one a tiny treasure chest. This was the moment of truth. They didn't have the keys, so they used crowbars and pry bars. The screech of metal tearing in the silent chamber, a violent sound. Boxes splintered open, spilling their contents. They worked with a methodical efficiency that was almost robotic. They weren't thieves in a frenzy. They were collectors, taking only what they had come for: cash, jewels, negotiable bonds. They filled large, durable bags, their hands moving quickly, discarding personal letters, photographs, items of sentimental value that held no monetary worth. It was a clinical, cold-hearted harvest. 4 hours they worked, emptying box after box. The bags grew heavy. The initial thrill had been replaced by a grim focus. The clock was ticking. They knew their window was limited. The weekend was long, but not infinite. As the first hints of a Sunday dawn began to color the sky over São Paulo, they made their decision. It was time to go. They retreated back through the hole in the vault floor, back into their tunnel, dragging their heavy, precious cargo with them. They left behind a scene of surreal violation, that inner sanctum of one of Brazil's most secure banks, ransacked with a gaping hole in the floor leading down into the earth. Back in the house on Alameda de Jarupis, they emerged from the ground for the last time. They sealed the tunnel entrance as best they could, covered it over. They cleaned the house, wiping every surface, leaving no fingerprint, no trace of their identity. They packed their tools and their loot into vehicles and simply drove away, melting back into the immense, anonymous body of the city. They left behind the tunnel, a silent, dark scar running beneath the streets, a testament to what they had done. The discovery, when it came, was one of pure disbelief. On Monday morning, when bank employees arrived, nothing seemed amiss. The main doors were locked. The cameras showed nothing. It was only when they reached the vault and then the inner strong box that the horror was revealed. The police were called. The scene confounded them. There was no broken door, no forced entry from the outside. It was as if the thieves had simply materialized inside the vault. It took them hours to find the hole, expertly cut through the 2-foot thick concrete floor. The investigation led them eventually to the house. They found the tunnel, a masterpiece of criminal engineering, leading from that quiet little house directly to the heart of the bank. It was empty. The birds had flown. The official loss was estimated to be in the tens of millions, but the true cost was greater. It was a cost measured in trust, the trust in security, in impenetrability, in the very foundations of the institutions we believe keep us safe. The Banco Itaú robbery wasn't just a theft. It was an idea, a dark, brilliant, and terrifying idea that proved no fortress is truly secure if the mind seeking to breach it is patient enough, clever enough, and brave enough to look for a different path. Most of the men were never caught. The loot was never recovered. It vanished into the shadow economy of a continent. The planner, the quiet man with the schematics, he is out there somewhere, or perhaps he is gone, but his legacy remains. It's a ghost story we tell in the world of security and crime, a reminder that the most formidable walls are not the ones made of steel and concrete, but the ones we build in our minds. And sometimes the most dangerous person in the world is not the one who tries to break the wall down, but the one who simply decides to dig under it. So the next time you walk into a bank, and you hear the solid click of the door closing behind you, remember the tunnel. Remember that beneath the surface of our ordered world, there is another world, a world of patience and silence, where impossible things are being planned. And ask yourself, as you stand on that polished floor, what is happening right now deep beneath your